A warm welcome back to the Information Security Stack, together with me, Daniel Gustafsson, and not Kim Hinda today. Actually, I'm by myself this week. Kim was occupied with some other things he needed to attend. So, guess what? It's gonna be all me today, essentially. So we're gonna have a conversation, you and me, listening to this currently. So, what I'm gonna talk about today is a short summary of an interview that we did in Swedish, unfortunately, with a guy called Johan Magnusson, who is the head of division information systems at the University of Gothenburg here in Sweden. And he has been a part of and is still actively doing research among the private sector and the possibility of digitalization. So his primary area of expertise is regarding digitalization. And the thing is that when he talked, I got to admit, I started to think about my own perspective of what digitalization is, what it means, and most importantly, I think I have had a preconceived notion of how different areas in the world can actually utilize and pretty much use the type of services that are available today. I've always had this mindset that the private sector is the sector that will most probably be in the forefront of digitalization and digitalization change, and that's probably true in the regard that they could potentially be, or is probably, the ones who will test new technologies first. But Johan brought up a very important point. The public sector is in dire need of digitalization, and most importantly, they are willing to share success stories if they succeed with a way of making themselves more digital, or just getting smarter tools or better solutions to work with. Because if you start to think about it, the private sector will probably keep whatever they come up with to themselves in a more private way in that regard. If it, let's say, like a massive automobile company, for instance, I highly doubt that GM will share any type of success stories with BMW or Mercedes or something like that. I doubt it, to be honest. But in the public sector, success stories tend to grow. And he highlighted that if you want to spend time and really try to make a big change, the public sector really is the sector to focus on in that regard. And I've been in the whole narrative and the mindset that it's going to be the private sector. That should be the focal point. And absolutely, don't get me wrong, that's important. But if you as a provider really wants to promote change, the public sector is there to absorb your skills and knowledges and know-hows regarding the technologies out there. He also highlighted the change of the role for the CIO over time. Back in the days, the CIO was probably the person in the organization who was responsible for all types of digital transformation or digital change, or owned all the internal IT systems. But looking at modern IT infrastructures today, the demands really don't come from the CIO anymore. It comes from the organization. So the role of the CIO has changed, and the organization is way more in charge of their own tools and the way they want to work moving forward. And I thought that was really interesting. And then that's been a topic that has been discussed over time. I know if you read articles regarding how the world is changing and so on, and the role of the CIO has been highly questioned, especially with the addition of cloud services just in general. The mindset then was maybe that just because all the cloud services exist, you won't host as much internally anymore, hence the CIO would become redundant. But that wasn't really his point. The point was more that the decision making and the system ownership really isn't in the hands of the CIO today. It's the same way it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Today, it's the organization itself that will put the demands on what type of systems, applications, products they want to use. Initiatives will most probably come from the organization as well, and the operational organization of the company. And this puts a big strain on, not a big strain, but it absolutely changes the dynamics of what the role of the CIO should be in the future. And that was, I gotta say, was quite, I kind of like that approach, because if we look at the world today, it is different. Who is in charge of purchasing and acquiring a new system? Who puts in the demands for what type of systems, and new tools that you want to use? It's not really just management decisions anymore. It really is operational decisions. So the operational departments of your company or the industry you're working in are today way more involved in that decision making, which was a big thing that he highlighted in his during this interview. Also, one of the things that we asked him was just digitalization in general. What does that mean? And how good are we to adapt to the new tools that are out there? And his simple answer was pretty much that, well, we struggle, especially in Sweden and Scandinavia and Europe in general, but Sweden absolutely, because we had a big focal point on Sweden, because that's where he has put in the vast majority of his research, is that from being a country in the forefront of digital transformation and digital adding digital tools into your world, which was true back in the days, Sweden has fallen behind the bell curve. We're not in the forefront anymore. We are struggling to keep up. Various reasons for it, but one big thing and one big takeaway was just that we are quite misinformed of what actually digitalization means. There are companies that claims that so if we get Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever type of communication apps that are available today, if we install that, then we have become digital. That's the whole scope of their digital process. And if that's the mindset you have, well, then digitalization really isn't going to help you in any way, shape, or form, because that's not a strategy. That's just an addition of a new product. And his big takeaway regarding that was just public sector and private sector, both sector, needs help. Or if we can't formalize those goals ourselves, providers such as ourselves needs to be there and actually help them and assist them in what is best for them as a company or an organization. What tools should they use? And are we promoting tools just to make money as providers, or are we actually promoting tools that we genuinely think will benefit the end customer? And that was also a bit of an eye-opener and got me thinking, at least, that if a provider of IT services actually take the stance of, let's make the best setup and best deal for the customer, not the shortest way for us to make money. Because if the ambition that we have as providers, that we just want customers to pay up, we just want them to start paying as fast as possible, the quickest deal that we can get done, we will most probably not provide the best solution for the end customer. And if the end customer is in a state where they struggle to define what is actually A, what they're looking for, B, what they need, and C, how do you actually utilize these services in a proper manner, then all we're doing is just selling them systems that will make us money, but it won't benefit them long term. And that got me thinking in the ways that if you could actually start providing services to these customers with the absolute number one priority for me as a provider is to provide the best suitable solution to the customer. Long term, that should generate loyalty from the customer to the provider, because if the customer realizes that we have their best interest at heart at all times, Not that they should pay their invoices as quickly as possible, so I can make my numbers look better. Because there's a big difference in how you approach that type of discussion, and I think you can tell quite quickly if a provider is actually looking to sell a service he or she believes is the best for me, or if the provider is just trying to make a paycheck. So we talked about the responsibility of the providers, and Johan's input to that was just exactly that all providers of these types of services, man, you could really, really benefit of just putting the customer's needs as priority one. Everything else is secondary, and make sure that whatever solution you put forward and you suggest for your end customer, it should be beneficial to the long term. Help them understand the benefits of the tools that you are selling them, not just that you have a product that they could generate an income for you with. So that was, for me at least, one of the biggest takeaways from and it's really got me thinking since we conducted the interview, that there's something to that. There's really something to that. Man, that would stand out in the crowd. If you're looking for a unique selling point as an IT provider, actually putting the needs of the customers as your top priority over everything in your organization, I think you will benefit long term, both from a loyalty perspective but also from an income perspective. Because if your top reason for selling a product is to make a paycheck or get that fast invoice and get the customers to pay as quickly as possible, then you have your interest at heart, not the customer's interest at heart. So that was actually something that I think is a big takeaway to really, really think about. So if you're listening to this right now and you are working for one of those IT providers out there, such as myself, that could be a way forward, trying to convince your management team that, you know what is actually our top priority here in terms of helping our customers become digital. And he also talked about the word digital transformation. He just briefly mentioned it, which I thought was quite funny, that digital transformation, which is the big word we use, it's a bit of a buzzword in the market right now. That's actually the wrong term, because you only do a transformation once. It's not an ongoing process. You do a transformation, that's it. So the real word we should talk about here is digitalization, period. And nothing else. And once again, how do you actually utilize these tools that are available? And how do you make them work for you? And also, does the addition of new digital tools, do they actually make you more productive? Does it actually help your end productivity, or did you just bring in a bunch of tools? What is the strategy behind your digitalization? And the big thing, and which Johan talked about as well, is that takes a commit from the management to make sure that if we really want to transform our infrastructure or make us more digital for whatever reason, for whatever purpose we have, it needs to be a decision that is committed by the management step one, day one. It can't be an anarchy project in the company or the organization where the organization revolts against the management. For sure, you could get something done that way, but it's not very productive because it's only going to build a gripe within the organization. So day one, step one, do you actually have the commit from the organizational management or the management team in the organization? Have they committed to what you're going to do? And once again, what's the strategy behind the purpose and the reason why you want to become digital? He also stressed the need to start to actually draw the benefits of the research that is currently ongoing. there are tons of great reports. There are tons of great information which you can draw the benefit of, which is done by people like Johan and his team and other researchers in the world similar to him, which they are actually looking into what the benefits of these systems are. So you can actually draw a lot of information before you start to kick off your own process. You don't have to go in blind into those types of decisions. So I would encourage you really to look into those reports and those numbers and get the actual data of what the benefits are. How do we actually become more productive, and so on and so forth, because there is a lot of research that is currently ongoing. And he kind of highlighted and stressed that far too few people actually look into those reports before they actually kick off their own programs, which essentially becomes the catch-22 scenario of organizations trying to build their own wheel. The wheel already exists, so you can take that wheel and you can improve it for your own sake, but you don't have to create your own processes at all time. You don't have to create your own material for decision. There are a bunch of good research data out there which you can utilize and draw the benefits of before you actually kick off your own program. He also highlighted that we are in a state right now where we need to be smart about the way we use these types of services. And also the fact that Sweden in general, because that was our focus, but also within the EU, we are in the situation right now where we will be lacking behind, and if we don't keep up with the trends and keep up with the abilities out there, long term it's going to cost companies, or not companies, it's going to cost countries ability to stay relevant as providers and so on and so forth. So it will have a long-term effect on budgets and incomes and resources available for countries moving forward as well. It's not only local for the companies or councils or public sector, whatever you're talking about. Long term, we need to stay relevant as a country, and keeping up and being part of this process of digitalization is going to be absolutely vital. And then, of course, then you can have the argument: will everything become better just because we become more digital? Well, probably not. You need to use those systems to their best benefits, but we can't just claim that we are most definitely in part of the digitalization just because we installed a product. We need to really be part of the discussion. We need to be part of the decision making. We need to be part of the initiatives that are being kicked off in Sweden and in EU and in the world for that matter. Because long term, if we're not, we're going to be left behind, and that will have effects on economies and countries' ability to stay relevant moving forward. We are in a world right now, or in a state right now, I should say, where we are highly dependent on specific products and specific countries to provide these systems, and it's not really the discussion. Okay, is one system better than the other just because the brand of the logo on the product? That's really not the relevant discussion. The relevant discussion is, how do we actually utilize the benefits of the system moving forward, and how do we actually implement a strategy for digitalization in general into our organization? And then the brand can be completely secondary to that decision. But it was a very, very interesting discussion with Johan. In the future, I hope we could bring him back, and maybe we conduct that interview in English just to make it easier for non-Swedish speaking people to follow along as well. But in a nutshell, this is what was covered in the interview and discussion with Johan. I do encourage you to follow him on social media platforms and so on, which we will link in the description of the episode. And of course, as always, if you want to ask anything regarding this topic, or if you have anything to add to our podcast, you will do that at citynetwork.eu/podcast. There you can ask us questions. You can put in your ideas or thoughts about digitalization in general, or other topics that you feel that you want to have discussed or answered. Once again, I hope we can bring back Johan in the future and maybe do the interview in English that time around. But in a short, summarizing nutshell, that was essentially what was discussed during the interview. And the big takeaway is that, man, it is important to have a strategy, not just trying to look at products. And us as providers, we really need to be consultants in this type of matters. Not just salespeople or sales representatives for a specific product. Put the company or the organization that you're working with, put their needs as number one and work from there. I think long term it's going to benefit you with the loyalty from your from your customers, and long term it's going to help you from a financial perspective as well. But number one priority, the customer's interest first. That was the biggest takeaway from this interview. We will talk to you again in a week's time. I hope you have an awesome time wherever you are. Until next time, take care.